imagined being adrift in the middle of the largest ocean on Earth, with nothing but a wooden canoe between you and the deep blue sea. There's no land in sight, no compass, no GPS. Your only guide is the vast, star-dusted canvas above you. This wasn't a survival scenario. This was the reality for the greatest explorers in human history. The Polynesian navigators. For thousands of years, these masters of the seas sailed across the Pacific, settling thousands of islands from Hawaii to Easter Island to New Zealand, forming the vast Polynesian Triangle. How did they achieve these incredible feats of navigation? Long before Europeans dared to venture out of sight of land, the secret was written in the stars. Tonight, we're going on a journey, not just across the water, but back in time, to understand the celestial genius of these. Forget everything you know about modern navigation. We need to learn to see the world through their eyes. The ocean wasn't an empty void. It was a living map, full of signs and pathways. The sky wasn't just a collection of twinkling lights. It was a reliable, ever-present compass. The foundation of Polynesian navigation was a deep, intimate knowledge of the stars. But it wasn't about memorizing complex charts like we do today. It was about relationships. They knew the stars like they knew their own family. They understood where each star and constellation would rise on the eastern horizon and where it would set in the west. This path across the sky gave them a precise directional bearing. To keep a canoe on a straight course, a navigator would align the bow with a rising star. As that star climbed too high in the sky to be a reliable guide, they would switch to another star rising from the same point on the horizon. This technique, a succession of stellar guides, allowed them to maintain a consistent heading throughout the night. One of the most important tools was the star compass. This wasn't a physical object, but a mental construct. An expert navigator at the Ura or Po memorized this circle of 32 points on the horizon, each one marked by the rising or setting position of a specific star. This mental compass was ingrained in their minds from childhood. They could sit in the belly of the canoe, feeling the rhythm of the waves, and visualize this entire celestial map, knowing exactly where they were and where they were going. Think of it like a 360-degree mental GPS, powered by starlight. But what happens when the sky is cloudy? This is where their genius truly shines. Navigation wasn't a single-skilled job. It was a holistic science that involved every single one of their senses. The navigators were masters of reading the ocean itself. They could feel the direction of ocean swells, the long, rolling waves that travel for thousands of miles across the open ocean. These swells are remarkably consistent. When a primary swell from a known direction hits the side of the canoe, it creates a unique, rocking motion. A skilled navigator could lie down in the hull and feel this motion, even in complete darkness or under a cloudy sky, to keep the vessel on course. They could even detect when a swell pattern was disturbed, a subtle sign that it had refracted around a distant, unseen island. The sky held more clues than just stars. The sun was their primary guide during the day. They observed its arc, its position at sunrise and sunset, and the length of its shadows to determine their east-west direction. The moon, with its predictable phases and path, also served as a reliable celestial marker. Even the planets, which they called the wandering stars, were incorporated into their mental maps. They knew the patterns of Venus, Jupiter, and others, using them as supplemental guides on their long voyages. Then there were the living signposts. The flight patterns of certain birds were crucial indicators of land. A frigate bird or a tern, for instance, flies out to sea in the morning to fish and returns to land in the evening. Spotting a flock of these birds heading in a determined direction at dusk was a sure sign that land was near. And in that specific direction, they could even tell how far they were from land by the species of the bird. Some birds stay within a 20-mile radius of their island, while others might venture over 100 miles out. The navigators also read the clouds. Small, stationary clouds on the horizon, on an otherwise clear day, often signaled the presence of an island, as land masses heat up and cause moisture to rise and condense. The color of the water could change, and even the reflections on the underside of clouds could betray the light green of a shallow lagoon, hinting at a nearby they could smell the land. The scent of wet foliage and flowers carried on the wind long before the island itself was visible. They tasted the salinity of the water. Every sense was a tool in their navigational toolkit. This knowledge was not learned from books. It was a sacred tradition, passed down through generations from master to apprentice, often within the same family. A young navigator would spend years, sometimes decades, under the tutelage of an elder. They would learn the star paths, the chants that held the navigational information, and the stories of the great voyages of their ancestors. These weren't just stories, they were oral maps, with each verse describing a stretch of the journey, the stars to follow, the currents to expect, and the islands along the way. The canoe itself, the vaca or was more than a vessel. It was a living part of their culture, built with reverence and designed for the open ocean. One of the most fascinating concepts is that of etok. This was a method for estimating your position when you couldn't see any land. The navigator would choose an island off to the side of their course, a reference island that they wouldn't actually visit. As they sailed forward, they would mentally picture this reference island passing by a sequence of their memorized steering stars on the horizon. By tracking its apparent backward movement against the backdrop of stars, they could triangulate their own position along their intended path. It's an incredibly sophisticated mental calculation, a testament to their spatial reasoning and deep astronomical knowledge. In the 1970s, this ancient art was on the verge of extinction. Centuries of colonization had suppressed these traditions, replacing celestial wayfinding with magnetic compasses and charts. But then came a renaissance. A group of passionate individuals in Hawaii and across the Pacific sought to revive this knowledge. They built a traditional double-hulled voyaging canoe, the Haka, Le'a, the Star of Gladness. With the guidance of one of the last master navigators, Mopielagi from the tiny island of Satawal. They set out to prove that their ancestors' methods were real and repeatable. In 1976, Hakele successfully sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti and back, a journey of over 5,000 miles without a single modern instrument on board. Mopialek stood on the deck, reading the stars, the sun, and the swells, just as his ancestors had done for millennia. This voyage was a watershed moment. It sparked a cultural reawakening across Polynesia, inspiring a new generation of navigators to learn the old ways. Today, Hakale, and other traditional canoes continue to sail, not just to rediscover roots, but to carry a message of cultural pride, environmental stewardship, and the incredible power of human ingenuity. The Voyage of the Stars is a story about more than just navigation. It's a story about connection to the cosmos, to the ocean, to nature, and to the generations that came before. It teaches us that the most powerful tools we have are not always the ones we can hold in our hands, but the knowledge we hold in our minds and the wisdom we carry in our hearts. The Polynesian navigator saw the world as a unified whole, where the sea and sky were not separate, but two parts of the same map. Their legacy reminds us that by observing, by listening, and by remembering, we too can find our way.